JET Brexit news. An amendment by Viscount Hailsham could derail Brexit, a Commons researcher warned. Lords this week voted by 335 votes to 244 to change the EU withdrawal bill to ensure Parliament is given a genuinely meaningful vote on the Brexit deal once negotiations have concluded. The amendment on Monday, April 30, was just one in a series of defeats for the government at the hands of peers. But Monday's change, championed by former Tory Minister Douglas Hogg, now Viscount Hailsham, could ultimately result in the UK staying in the European Union, Christopher Howarth said. The senior House of Commons researcher warned the ambitious and vague amendment was deliberately worded in such a way to make it difficult to understand, while still granting the peers the power to derail Brexit. Writing on the Brexit Central site, Mr. Howarth explained there are a series of separate triggers contained within clauses of the amendment which could force the government to renegotiate its withdrawal agreement with the EU. He said, if all the triggers are all activated, they could ultimately lead to the Lords vetoing the government's Brexit deal. He warned peers could then potentially block ministers from pushing ahead without an agreement, throwing the exit process into complete disarray just weeks before the UK is scheduled to split from the EU. Emma Howarth said, if this were to happen, it would be too late for the EU to reopen negotiations, and may pave the way to Britain remaining in the bloc. He said, that is their lordship's plan. Throw as much mud as possible into the system, and hope it fails. Such a strategy would, of course, wreak immeasurable damage to the government's negotiating position. Why would the EU offer a deal, when the Lords can help deliver an even better one for the EU? Holding open the option of Remain is a recipe for a bad deal, which in turn leads to an excuse for the Lords to reject the withdrawal agreement, leading to Remain a self-fulfilling legislative prophecy. Explaining the series of triggers, Emma Howarth said they had been carefully designed to allow peers to activate them without the interference of the democratically elected House. After Theresa May's Brexit bill has suffered a series of high-profile defeats by the House of Lords, first trigger, he said, would essentially provide the House of Lords with a veto over the withdrawal agreement, which will set out the terms of the UK's divorce from Brussels. The next trigger stipulates Parliament must pass the law relating to the implementation of the agreement by January 31, 2019, which could leave the government limited time, if the Lords had already vetoed the first deal. The last trigger, which Mr. Howarth said could only be pulled if the Lords had vetoed the exit deal, would force the government to bring forward a motion which would need to be considered both by the Commons and peers. He warned the tight timeline of Brexit would mean this motion would only be brought towards the very end of the process. He said, the atmosphere in which this part of the clause is triggered would be febrile. It would, by necessity, be weeks away from Brexit Day, a situation in which the EU would be unable to reopen negotiations, even if it wished to. We would have Brexit Day looming, Remain backing organisations such as the Commons fretting about the loss of the transition period, the government unprepared for an unexpected exit, the EU refusing to renegotiate. Then hopefully the EU could suggest a delay in Article 50, staying in the EU or remaining in the single market/customs union, for a price of course. Yet if House of Lords could block Brexit by activating a series of triggers in a new amendment, the Labour Party in the Commons would undoubtedly back it. All of the amendments made so far by the Lords can still be overturned in the Commons, but Mrs May has a working majority of just 13. And every vote on Brexit raises the possibility of a revolt by at least a dozen pro-EU Tory MPs. The Lords are due to consider the EU withdrawal bill again on Tuesday, May the 8th,